When anyone talks about Duke Nukem, chances are they think of Duke Nukem 3D. This timeless so-called Doom clone is a staple of any retro gamer's collection. In July of 1991, Apogee Software and Scott Miller released Duke Nukem, a 2D side-scrolling action game written by Todd Apogee and art drawn by George Broussard, Jim Norwood, and Alan H. Blum III. Released only on MS-DOS, the game featured VGA graphics, PC speaker sound, and smooth scrolling for its time. The game, set in 1997, which was the near future, had us playing the titular character of Duke Nukem, trying to stop Dr. Proton from taking over the world. With 3 episodes to complete, each with its own theme and enemies, the action is always new and interesting right up to the final boss battle with Dr. Proton himself. Each episode takes around an hour to complete if you don't stop to look around, so in total there are roughly 3 hours of fun to be had.
I am back.
Duke Nukem 2 was released in 1993, again by Apogee Software and Todd Apogee, but this time, instead of simple PC speaker sounds, we got full Sound Blaster and AdLib support, as well as a full MIDI soundtrack featuring music by Jason Blackawick and Robert Prince, who also composed the soundtrack for ID Software's Doom. Another ex-Doom team member from ID, Tom Hall, wrote the story for Duke Nukem 2. Tom Hall was involved in the early development on Doom before leaving ID to join Apogee in 1993, but that story is for another video. Improved graphics, sloped surfaces, and 4 new episodes made Duke Nukem 2 an instant favourite among platform game fans. However, Doom had just hit shelves shortly before Duke 2, so sales were poorer than those of Duke 1, as a 3D first-person shooter had been born. This time, Duke is abducted by an alien species called the Rigeltons. His mission is to escape the mothership and once again free the world.
Dead. Those alien bastards are gonna pay for shooting up my ride.
The third Duke Nukem game hit shelves in 1996 after 2 years and $300,000 of development. This time, unlike the previous installments, Duke Nukem was now a full 3D first-person shooter set to compete with the likes of Doom 2. George Broussard, one of the designers for Duke 3D, said, "I'd say we initially just set to feature clone Doom." Duke Nukem 3D runs on the Build game engine created by Ken Silverman. Although Duke Nukem was the first massively popular game to utilize the engine, several other games such as Blood, Nam, Redneck Rampage, and Shadow Warrior also used the game engine or a modified version of the engine. One of the biggest differences between Doom and Duke was that Duke never took itself seriously. From the fun one-liners from Duke himself, voiced by actor John St. John, to the tongue-in-cheek references to other games and current events, the action is always heavily seeded with dark humour and over-the-top locations. Another first was the levels were designed around believable locations such as cinemas, film sets, office complexes, city blocks, and even a sushi restaurant. The game is split into 3 episodes again, although a 4th episode was added in an upgrade known as the Atomic Edition. The Atomic Edition also added a new weapon and 3 new enemies alongside 11 new levels. Duke 3D also shipped with the build editor and other modification tools to allow people to create their own maps with thousands of online tutorials and examples to work with. Creating maps was one of those skills that was easy to learn but hard to master. Like other games of the time, user modifications ranged from new maps, sounds and graphics to entire total conversions, creating an entirely new experience. Although I've always been a Doom fan, Duke Nukem 3D was always enjoyable and I created several maps myself. Any real locations I go to, such as work, shopping malls or notable locations in films, I'd always have a go at creating in Duke 3D. There was plenty of different types of aliens to take on, each with their own attack patterns and methods. The levels varied immensely but flowed together in a way that was very believable. The first episode, LA Meltdown, starts with the aliens shooting down your ship, which crash lands near a cinema, which then flows to the red light district of LA. From here you're captured by the alien scum and put into death row prison. Once you escape from the prison, which has references to the Shawshank Redemption hidden around the level, you head through an abandoned toxic waste dump, through a post-earthquake abyss with references to Indiana Jones, and finally fight one of the main bosses in his own lair.
Die, you son of a bitch. I'm Duke Nukem, and I'm coming to get the rest of you alien bastards.
The second episode, Lunar Apocalypse, takes place almost entirely in space, as you take on the aliens on their own turf. In this episode you go from ship to station, all with beautifully rendered backgrounds of space and Earth orbits. Some of the final levels in this episode take place on the surface of the moon, complete with references to the NASA space program, as well as a few nods to other science fiction movies such as The Monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and plenty of HAL 9000 faceplates watching you throughout the levels. The episode wraps up in a fight with the alien overlord in an orbiting biospace station, the walls oozing slime and the doors almost seeming organic. The final episode of the original release, Shrapnel City, has you starting near a sushi bar, working through the bank district and swimming through a flooded city block. There are several levels that follow, including a movie studio, a subway system, and even a fire station before ending in the final boss fight at a giant stadium. Although there are many references to other games, movies and current events, Duke 3D also has nods to the other games in the Duke Nukem franchise itself, such as a Duke Nukem 2 arcade game and a Balls of Steel pinball machine. Even the title of the final episode, Shrapnel City, is taken from the first episode of Duke Nukem 1. Duke 3D also had a multiplayer feature known as Duke Match. Although you could play in any of the existing levels, there were a few built-in deathmatch levels, but more importantly, thousands of user-created levels available from the internet. Some people saw Duke Nukem 3D as a competitor to Doom, even though it came out a few years after Doom 2, but I love both games. They're very different from each other, with the only thing really being in common is that they're both first-person shooters. Most FPS games of the era were simply referred to as Doom clones, which at a basic level Duke 3D is, but on a deeper level it's a fundamentally different game. Like other retro games, there are several modern source ports which allow you to play on modern hardware. Some are literally just Windows versions of the original game, while others provided higher resolution textures and even 3D models in place of the sprites, although this doesn't always work well, with some of the decorative models facing in the wrong directions or being too big to pass through. All in all, Duke 3D is tons of fun for its humour, great level design and over-the-top action. I would rate it a 9 out of 10 and I still play it whenever I can.